Hello and welcome to this next edition of Couch to Couch. My name is Chris Bridgeland. I look after our technical teams here at Couchbase across EMEA. This series of chats is to give you a chance to get some insights and perspectives from a range of our customers, partners and friends. And in today's Couch to Couch, I'm delighted to be joined by near futurist and public speaker Ade McCormack. Ade has spoken at various events for us in the past, and he's always brought some wonderful insights forward. So I'm looking forward to hearing how the current situation has influenced his views on the world today and for the future. So Ade, why don't we begin with you briefly introducing yourself?
Thank you, Chris. Delighted to be involved. Former technologist, today focused on helping organizations and maybe even societies thrive in the post-industrial, or let's call it post-COVID world. So a lot of advisory, some keynoting, bit of writing.
What are your thoughts on how, on reflection, companies might have prepared a little bit better for this?
We've been aware for quite a long time that disruption was on our doorstep, but generally we saw it through the lens of digital or technology. We didn't see it as biological. So I think, a lot of us got caught on the hop by this. So literally, as we speak, we are part of a case study that people will talk about for decades to come.
Are you getting a sense at all about how companies are now reflecting on that and any sort of hints of inspiration about what they're potentially going to do differently?
Some of the smarter leaders are, yes, I realize that there's a fire in the building, so to speak, but how can we turn this into an opportunity? We've seen our business model kind of start its last mile, so to speak. This has simply accelerated it, and now we need to move on to the next phase, the next chapter. What it has shown us, I think, both corporately and individually, is you need more than just a plan A.
Do you see any challenges, from people being, not around the people that they get that sort of energy from, and that innovation possibly being stifled? Or do you think there are some smart ways that you can possibly drive an innovation type approach?
It is a different way of working. It requires a degree of self-discipline. There's no boss looking over your shoulder, so to speak. And what it does highlight is that there are two types of organizations: those that trust their workers and those that don't. Those that trust their workers will just say, look, here's the outcomes we're looking for. Just make them happen. I don't really care how long it takes. And then there's those that don't, that are very much panicking. Are my people working? And they'll just set them, micro activity indicators, and it will just be unbearable, but unbearable from a distance.
How much of a challenge do you see that being able to set that goal, set that objective, set that timeline, and make it work when you are all remote versus getting back together again?
What we're experiencing now is an accelerated boost towards the gig economy. And so your ability to identify what's required, when it's required, and leave it up to the gig worker or the expert to make it happen, and to trust that they will get on with it because you trust them to do that. That's the way we have to work now. So we don't need managers to beat the drum, so to speak, but we do need managers to articulate without any ambiguity what is required. I think there's a new management discipline required, and there's a new type of worker required that has a reputation for delivery and delivers.
Who do you think are the typical winners and losers in this one are going to be in essence the losers being very much those high street stores, those high street type mentality companies that use it as a shop front versus using it as a showroom,
Mm.
attitude, and how do you think they're going to be looking at changing some of their ways of doing business going forwards, so that they can, in essence, deal with something like this coming up again?
The smarter ones will recognize that, particularly in this climate, that humans crave humans. So if they can create experiential spaces that are not necessarily about trading or procurement, because that stuff can be done online, but if you're able to come in and feel the clothes you're about to potentially buy, and hold the device, the iPad and so on, that does seem to be the way forward, creating this experience, and increasingly making that a social experience, not just a bunch of people in the same shop floor, but creating some sort of smarter connectivity between those people. Going to the shops is much more than just the acquisition of goods. I think there's a lot of scope there. And we're essentially social animals, and we're social animals that like to move. So the shopping environment, whether it's a kind of high-end boutique or a retail store, presents a lot of opportunity for creativity and fun, if you like, for the consumer.
What would you say would be your sort of survival tips in this current situation?
One of the things to realize is that when you're working from home, you don't have to operate as if you're a factory. Work doesn't have to start at 9. It doesn't have to end at 5. The run or whatever physical pursuits you might have do not have to operate outside those hours. It took me about a decade to shake off the shackles of tethered working. I couldn't let go of the behaviors of when I started, when I finished, and so on. So actually just rethinking in every respect how you work can be a lot of fun. Better integration with your family, finding hobbies that you can actually practice on a micro basis. And one of the peculiar things that I do, for example, because I'm very conscious that we need to move, every hour I will get up and I will do some sort of movement. Now, if I was working in an open plan office, me on all fours quadrupeding up and down the aisle would look very strange. It only looks strange to my family, but it's a great way of sort of exercising, recharging the nervous system, then back in the saddle, and you've had a kind of a movement snack, so to speak. So strongly recommend movement, strongly recommend viewing everything you do in the context of sociality. And of course, discussions like this, actual discussions, really help as well.
We as ourselves have got sort of these virtual yoga sessions. Is there anything else that you've seen that sort of has taken your interest as something that could work?
Where I can, I try to, if you like, dedicate as much of my morning to creative, productive thought before I let the world in. So I keep away from the news, I keep away from social media, and it's almost like your brain is at its freshest, and you can wake up in the morning and turn your phone on and allow it to be dissipated, your creativity to be dissipated by the news of the day. So I keep all of that to the side. So it's a question of what you prioritize, and it's a question of the habits you develop. And it's taken me a long time, but I've now developed habits that, if you like, optimize my creativity, but then allow the chaos to ensue. And you as a senior executive yourself, that perhaps your opportunity to get your actual work done can be quite limited, and you fit it in around the maelstrom of the day-to-day activity. We now have an opportunity to really take charge of our day and optimize it to get the best from it. So I think people spending a bit of time rather than just replicating what they did in the office is time well spent.
With certain projects going on at the moment, lots of software development historically has always been done. You go into development hubs and offices where development teams are working. There has been a concept of working from home or having a shift pattern of, come in at 11 o'clock and keep going on until sort of 9, 10 o'clock in the evening, because that's the way you work best. This is naturally driving people to start considering that, surely, isn't it?
Well, I'm a former software developer myself, and I have to say that for me, that was the most Zen-like part of my career, where you could get so into something that you'd forget to eat, you'd forget to sleep. You'd also experience the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, as your software didn't work, for example. So there's a lot to be said for software development. There's a lot to be said for the untethered or unbounded approach that software engineers have been allowed to enjoy. People have never really understood these software engineer guys, but we best let them get on with it in the way that they want to get on with it. And by and large, they give us much more value and many more hours. It's not a 9 to 5 thing. If you're a software developer, if you're going to do it well, you have to see it almost as part of your character, your identity, and so on. And there's a lot to be learned from that. And we're seeing, if you like, software engineering practices like agile development making their way out into the wider world. You might even say that the practices, the day-to-day practices of a software engineer give us some light in terms of how we need to conduct our day-to-day activities.
And that's an interesting point you make about the software developers. There are certain concepts that we're being asked quite often by our customers, which are, people have gone from the waterfall mode to agile and the CI/CD approach to doing things. Do you see a trend of things such as low code or no code approaches to doing things potentially challenging the developer world going forwards, or is that a trend that's not really sort of showing itself up yet because it's still very early days?
There hasn't been the advances that I would expect in software engineering over the last 30 odd years. Object orientation and the more, if you like, component-based approach has created the need for not software developers, but software assembly people bringing the modules together. And it makes a lot of sense to do that. You do get greater productivity. I mean, I still marvel when I look at video games, and I go back to my Commodore 64 with the sprite that's moving very slowly. Yeah. I'm just blown away by what I'm experiencing today. But the people can do that because of this modularization, because somebody's already produced the piece of software that allows something to bounce off a wall. So there's a lot of benefits in that. And the video industry, video games industry has got its act together in that respect. But corporately, and I'm a little bit out of touch here, they generally haven't, because to create a genuinely reusable library means developing software today that will take longer to benefit the organization in the future. And most projects are driven on a kind of how quickly, how cheaply can we do this? So what are ostensibly reusable components aren't, because they haven't been designed actually with that in mind. So there's probably a lot of unnecessary coding being done because of the lack of reusability designed into the software in the first place.
Do you put a reasonable weight behind the sort of the algorithm approach to doing things and making use of that machine learning and artificial intelligence approach to doing things?
Yeah, algorithms are very good at picking up on signals in large data sets. And what it does throw up is, well, what's the point of having humans in the workplace? And you might say the new definition of talent is being a person that can do something that an algorithm or a robot cannot do. And I think we've got computers in our head. They've evolved over millions of years, and what we're very good at is picking up on weak signals in very small data sets. So, we're kind of engaging with each other now. We're not necessarily consciously doing it, but we're sort of picking up on micro signals in each other's expressions. That's a very challenging thing to be able to do, but we do it naturally. So there's a real opportunity here for humans to stay economically in play if they're prepared to be human, if they're prepared to be social, if they're prepared to use their cognitive capacity in an innovative manner.
Are there any sort of final thoughts that you would sort of throw to the people watching this today, to basically try and make the best of this and come out of this in the best way possible?
If you were to say to me, Ade, what are the skills you need to be learning today in the moments you have free? I think it's not so much skills. Skills, you will pick them up as and when they're required given the job. It's developing that mindset of adaptability, of learnability, being comfortable being out of control. You're in very stormy waters. It's never going to be the same again, but you need to kind of align yourself with the current. And rather than sort of wait for the new normal to return, it won't. It's getting used to being, you might say, a modern day digital hunter-gatherer, and we're out on the, well, we're not allowed to be out on the savannah, but we will be out on...
Two at a time, as long as
we are literally in a kind of economic wilderness, and we need to spot the berries, and we need to eat the berries, and one day there'll be no berries on the bush. You can stare at that bush for as long as you like, but at some point you're going to have to move on and find some other food sources. You yourself, Chris, will know that you have to go out there and win the business, and that's no trivial thing. So developing this mindset of not only have I got to do the work, I've got to find the work, and I've got to do the work well. And if I do the work well, the next wave of work will be easier to acquire. That kind of visceral survival mindset is what we all need.
I'm very heartened by the way in which our company Couchbase has responded to it, to the current situation. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you again, and we'll hopefully catch up with you. If you want to wrap up with some final words from yourself, that'd be great.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me. If you're interested in my perspectives, I've got a blog with quite a lot of content on there, ademccormack.com. I've also got a career disruption channel on YouTube if you're interested. And yeah, keep learning. And if we were having this discussion in a year's time, I would hope that everybody listening will have at least one side hustle. Having only a plan A economically is far too risky in this world that we're moving into. So starting to develop your plan B, your plan C, and so on, I think that's key.
Perfect. Thanks, Ade. Much appreciated. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll catch up with you all again on the next Couch to Couch session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.